Most people prepare for death in practical ways. They make a will, they organize money, they think about doctors, medicine, hospitals, and family. But almost nobody prepares the mind. And from a Buddhist point of view, that may be the most important preparation of all. Because much of the suffering around death does not come only from the fact that the body fails. It comes from panic. It comes from resistance. It comes from the mind being shocked by something it always knew was coming, but never really allowed itself to face. That is the strange thing about death. We know it is certain. We know it surrounds us. We know no one gets out of it. And yet most people live as if not thinking about it will somehow protect them. But it does not protect them. It only makes the shock worse. Buddhist training takes the opposite approach. It says, think about these things while the mind is calm. Think about them while the mind is steady. Think about them before crisis comes. Because when the mind learns to look directly at aging, illness, and death without collapsing, something very important begins to happen. A burden lifts. Fear loses some of its force, and reality becomes easier to bear. One Buddhist teacher described an exercise like this. Imagine the body as it will be in 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30. Then imagine it old. Imagine it dead. Imagine it returning to ashes. And then bring it all the way back, step by step, to this present moment. Now that may sound severe, but the point is not to become depressed. The point is to remove the usual fear and dismay. The point is to train the mind to see clearly, to see that these changes are not a personal betrayal. They are the normal way of things. That is a very different way to look at death. Instead of saying, this should not be happening to me, you begin to understand, this is the nature of embodied life. And strangely enough, that understanding can make the mind less disturbed, not more. A lot of panic begins with perception. That may sound abstract, but it is very practical. A perception is the way the mind frames something, the story it tells, the image it clings to, the meaning it assigns. And according to this talk, one of the most important questions you can ask is this. What is the perception that creates that little catch in the heart when you think about your own death? That is such a powerful question, because most of the time, we do not examine the fear. We just feel it. But Buddhism asks us to slow down and look more closely. What exactly am I afraid of? Is it pain? Loss of control? Separation? The collapse of identity? The loss of pleasure? Regret over how I lived? Fear that I have not understood what life was for? When you begin to see the perception clearly, you are no longer completely trapped inside it. You can question it. You can loosen it. You can replace it with something wiser. Instead of seeing death as a cosmic insult, you can begin to see it as part of the structure of life. Instead of seeing aging as humiliation, you can begin to see it as a warning and a teacher. Instead of seeing illness as only an interruption, you can begin to see it as a call to practice. This does not erase difficulty, but it changes your relationship to difficulty, and that changes everything. But the mind cannot do this work without stability. That is why the talk places so much emphasis on concentration. You need a foundation inside, a place where the mind can settle, a place where it does not immediately run after fear, a place where it can observe its own movements. This is why meditation matters, not as an abstract spiritual hobby, but as training. You sit with the breath. You return to the body. You learn how to stay. And from that steadiness, you begin to notice. This movement of mind goes towards suffering. This movement goes away from it. This movement tightens. This movement releases. That inner stability becomes a kind of safe place, not a fantasy safe place, a real one, because it is built inside the mind itself. And when life becomes unstable, that training matters. If the body weakens, the mind has somewhere to stand. If fear rises, the mind has somewhere to return. If death comes closer, the mind is not meeting it empty-handed. The talk then gives a very useful framework. It says there are 4 reasons people fear death. And this is where the video really becomes practical. The first is attachment to sensual pleasure. In plain English, we get used to comfort. We get used to stimulation, pleasure, distraction, enjoyment, the little rewards and entertainments that make up daily life. And death threatens to take all of that away. So naturally, the mind resists. The second is attachment to the body. We do not just live in the body. We identify with it. Its strength becomes our confidence. Its appearance becomes our identity. Its ability becomes our sense of self. So when the body weakens, fear rises. The third reason is the knowledge that we may have lived unskillfully. This one goes deep. If a person senses that they have caused harm, wasted life, hardened the heart, or ignored what matters, then death feels dangerous, because death brings reckoning. And the fourth reason is that one has not really seen the Dhamma. One has not yet seen deeply enough that there is something beyond the ordinary panic of birth and death, something deeper than the frightened ego, something death cannot simply wipe away. Now, even if a viewer does not fully understand that last point yet, the practical lesson is clear. Fear of death becomes smaller as wisdom becomes deeper. So the work is not only emotional, it is spiritual, it is ethical, it is about how you live now. That is why thinking about death in Buddhism is not meant to make you gloomy. It is meant to clarify what is worth doing. What in life really matters? What is worth carrying to the end? What can actually help when the body no longer cooperates? Not status, not possessions, not image, not endless entertainment. What helps is a mind with some steadiness, a heart with less regret, less clinging, less confusion, less fear. More honesty, more goodwill, more discernment, more practice. The body is useful, yes, but it can only be depended on up to a point. And if we cling to it as if it were our permanent home, it becomes one more reason to panic. So the goal is not to hate the body, not to reject life, not to become cold or detached in a dead way. The goal is to care for life while seeing clearly what it can and cannot give. That is a much saner relationship to being human. The talk says something else I really love. It says that preparing for death is one of the essential projects of being a human being. Animals feel fear, but they cannot prepare in the same conscious way. Human beings can. We see old age, we see sickness, we see death, we see suffering everywhere around us. And in the Buddhist tradition, these are called divine messengers, warnings, reminders, wake-up calls. A baby crying, an old person, a sick person, a dead person. These are not just sad sights. They are teachings. Life is showing us the truth again and again. The question is whether we use the warning wisely, or whether we turn away until it is too late. So how do you begin preparing for death without panic? Begin small. Sit quietly for a few minutes each day and let yourself remember, I too am subject to aging. I too am subject to illness. I too am subject to death. Do not say it dramatically. Say it steadily. Then watch the mind. Where does it tighten? What story appears? What is the catch in the heart? Then return to the breath. Let the breath become your foundation, and from that steadiness ask, what am I clinging to right now? What am I afraid to lose? What would it mean to live in such a way that death would frighten me less? That is the practice, not denial, not morbidity, not pretending death is beautiful, but training the mind so it does not fall apart when reality arrives. And that is the deeper promise here. You may not control when death comes. You may not control how the body ages. You may not control the exact conditions of your final days. But you can train the mind. You can uproot some of the perceptions that create suffering. You can build stability. You can live with less regret. You can loosen your grip. And when you do that, death may still come, but panic does not have to rule the meeting. So that is the invitation. Do not wait for the hospital room. Do not wait for the diagnosis. Do not wait until fear has already taken over. Practice now. Think about death while the mind is calm. Train the mind while there is time. And little by little, you may find that the thing you feared most becomes one of the deepest motivations to live more truthfully, more peacefully, and more awake.